when I first reached out to you, I was at a point where I was about a year postpartum. I was on medications, but it was getting to a point where I couldn't leave the house.
Hello.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to get my camera going.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
You you look great. How are you?
Great, how are you?
Good. I'm so glad you decided to take some time this afternoon. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. I was just getting logged off work, so I'm a couple minutes late, so sorry.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. Awesome. So, yeah, to let you know kind of how these go, it's just kind of a nice freewheeling conversation between us. And
Yeah,
there's two purposes. One is really just to celebrate you and all of the progress that you've made. And then number two is to, just kind of pay it forward to people who are in a similar spot to where you started, who are in that headspace where, first of all, they're probably feeling pretty stuck. They
yeah.
might be feeling like there's just not really a way for them to work through their issues. And hopefully we can, distill a couple of the key things that worked for you and have, created such a lasting change. Because now it's been, what, a year since we worked together, I think?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I like graduated from the program in June. So yeah, a year.
A full year. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw you put up that post recently. It sounds like you've had a really awesome year,
Oh yeah.
so we'll be unpacking that as well. Um, to start, if you don't mind, like, why can you share a little bit about just kind of like where you were at before you and I were working together? Because I know that there was a decently long list of things that you felt like you couldn't do,
Yeah.
and just kind of describe like how is the anxiety affecting day-to-day life for you?
Yeah, I've had underlying anxiety since in my 20s, but big traumatic events would trigger it and spiral it into a point that I didn't know how to get out of that spiral. My When you and I first talked, or when I first reached out to you, I was at a point where I was about a year postpartum. I was on medications, but it was getting to a point where I couldn't leave the house. I would panic at 9 o'clock in the morning thinking about the fact that 3 p.m. I had to go pick up my son from school. And the closer it got to 3 p.m., I was starting to panic, cry. I was calling family members, like, can you guys go pick my son up from school? Which is, mind you, 3 minutes from my house.
Sure.
Um, about 3 months before I got into the program, they had prescribed me clonazepam. I had been on it before back years ago. And they'd given me a small amount for whenever I needed it. And it was getting to a
Mhm.
point where I wasn't able to grocery shop. I wasn't able to go pick up my kids from school. I wasn't able to do anything outside of the house without taking the clonazepam. And I just felt stuck. Like nothing could be spontaneous for me because I had to wait
Mhm.
an hour. So, my fiance would get home from work and be like, hey, let's go out to dinner. I work kind of a night shift, so I'm like, oh, we can't because by the time I take my medicine, it's going to be a good 45 minutes to an hour till that kicks in. And then I would try to go without it, and I would panic that I was going to panic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would get into the restaurant, and maybe I was just feeling a little sensation of, I don't know, carrying a heavy baby into the restaurant. Maybe it was just like a feeling of fatigue, but in my
Yeah.
mind, that small sensation turned into something's wrong. I'm going to panic. And there were many very embarrassing moments of me full blown panic attack, and having to leave restaurants or stores because of it. And I just felt stuck, like I was just locked into my house.
Yeah.
And the only way out was to take this medicine, which then I was becoming dependent on. I was taking it every day. Um, yeah, and so I felt stuck and like I couldn't live life without first taking this little tiny pill. And it was just really frustrating for me and the kids and the family. Something came up,
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't
Yeah.
just get up and go. So,
Right. Yeah, it's like it becomes one of the metaphors I like to use is when it gets to that level, it's almost like anxiety is like this like living like monster under the stairs. It's like you have to kind of like revolve your life around it. Like
absolutely.
when is it aggravated? When is it hungry? When is it being loud? That
Yeah.
kind of thing. And was the medication like working for you too? Like, were you able, like, was it one of those things where if you took the medication, you were good to go, but you just really didn't want the dependency on the medication, or was it still not
Yeah.
like allowing you to fully do what you wanted to do?
I mean, it definitely works. It was a benzo, so it definitely worked.
Yeah.
However, the next morning I would wake up with rebound anxiety so bad that then I was in this never ending cycle of
Right. Right.
take the medicine, feel great for 4 to 5 hours, wake up in the morning, sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, having a panic attack in my sleep, with this constant rebound anxiety. And I had tried different medications. All of them gave me this. The headaches were horrible, stomach issues. There was like just side
Right.
effects that I didn't like. And really, it was just this. I have 3 teenagers and a baby. So spontaneous things happen where we have to get up and go. Like we have to run to the store quick and grab milk, or one of the kids' cars broke down. I couldn't be there to do that. And I was kind of feeling like a burden. I was
Right.
happy to call everybody else to do these simple tasks for me because I couldn't do it. So,
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's a good thing for people to know because the majority of the people we serve are usually parents. And even
mhm.
if they're not parents, there's this sort of guilt around anxiety. But interestingly, even though anxiety affects all of the people around us, we tend to believe that we have to postpone dealing with the anxiety. There's kind of this belief I see people have of like, well, I can't put myself first because I've got to just focus on the day-to-day demands. I've got to make sure that this kid has this and this kid has this and my husband has this. And what they fail to realize is like not putting yourself first is strangely the selfish thing at a certain point.
Yeah,
Like the thing that makes everything in life so much easier is just deciding
right.
to put your mental health first for a short period of time to deal with it. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute because I'm sure a lot of things that felt so effortful are now feeling a
Yeah.
lot easier.
Oh, for sure.
Um, and so I know that the medication was a big thing that you would turn to. Was there any other kind of like method that you had tried previously as well that you felt like you hit a dead end with? Because one thing we find is people will try a couple methodologies, they won't get very far, and they'll just conclude, "I'm broken. This is it. Like I'm just gonna have to deal with this forever." And they don't realize that actually the statistical majority of people like the standard coping mechanisms just don't work for, or they don't work sufficiently for. So I'm just curious, did you try anything else besides medication too?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did CBT therapy or just standard therapy.
Sure.
And the one-on-one talking was nice to get things out. Here are my frustrations, here are my worries for the week. It was the method, and I'm not saying anything wrong about standardized therapy. It's
No, of
it's
course
great
not.
for some people. But
Yeah.
for me, I have so many different aspects to why I had anxiety, why I had depression, why I had PTSD, where I just felt like I was in this black and white book and
Mm,
they were trying to find what things would work and they weren't really tailoring it to me. It was just like, well, this book says, that
sure.
this is how you should process this or try to do things. And it did help with some of my kind of issues I was having, but not all of them. And I
Right.
think I went to a group therapy for anxiety and I was sitting there and I just realized it wasn't a feeling like I'm not like these people. It was just that CBT therapy is more on the notion of I'm concerned, let's say the sky is falling, and then you
Mhm.
kind of have to question yourself, what evidence do you have that this is going to happen? Has this ever happened before? And a lot of my anxieties were more past trauma based, where I needed a different approach to it, and it just wasn't working, so
Sure.
um did help, just kind of in my day-to-day life, but I always kind of looked at my kind of mental health issues as I had my big mental health issues, my big traumatic PTSD experiences, and then I had my day-to-day stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like it was just one thing was being tackled. And I wasn't really learning how to tackle all of them. It was just kind of, okay, well, today I don't feel good and this is why. So,
Right.
but yeah, so I tried it. I didn't mind it. It wasn't working. So
Sure, sure. And I think that that's a big thing for people to understand is that there's all sorts of, I mean, the world of mental health is a giant world now.
yeah.
And the thing that people need to understand is that there's all sorts of things out there that are valuable, but that when something is valuable, it may not necessarily be sufficient. And it depends on what that individual's problems are, but even also what that person's goals are.
Right.
So, like, one of the things we find is some people are totally fine with the whole I'm going to go to the appointment once a week and as long as I can have that space where I can explore my feelings, I feel great. Like if somebody is content with that arrangement, that's great. Like keep
Yeah.
doing that. If someone is content with the medication route and that's working for them, that's great too. But what most people don't realize is that based off the most recent medical research now, the majority of people, it's over 50% of people they found, the NHS did a study, over 50% of people find talk therapy to not be sufficient. And then with medication, it's even higher. It's 75%. So the therapy and medication are usually very valuable. It's just for a small portion of the population, they're both valuable and sufficient. So
Yeah.
it's important. It's just important for somebody to figure out what type of person they are. Um, so let's get into like what changed for you, right? So when you got into the method that we teach, it might be a little challenging for you to put yourself back into that mode because that was a good year
Right.
ago now, and I'm sure a lot of it is kind of more automatic for you now. You probably don't have to think about it much,
Yeah.
but
No.
but what do you remember being maybe a little different? Like, were there any kind of like were there a couple like light bulb moments that you recall as you started engaging in our process?
Yeah. When I think back on the program, it was the realization and maybe confidence that I'm in control of what I worry about, how I react to things. And I don't feel like that has maybe it has never been brought forth, at least the way that your program like kind of brings it to mind. Where then I was just thinking, like, yeah, like this is my life. I don't have to worry about this stuff. And also really I guess I never had the back end of it. The program ends and then you're like, okay, now I'm kind of out in the world all by myself,
Right.
but you're not with your program. So there was a couple times because I have some phobias that come up. And there was a couple times where I did start to get back into like an anxious spiral, but I had the tools to go back and fix it. There was even a time I scheduled a meeting with you and I canceled it because I figured it out on my own. So I was like, yeah, don't need to talk to Ty. But um, it was this realization that I was in control. And I don't know what portion of the program it was or what, but I think it was just kind of over the first couple chats with you and kind of lesson plans that I was realizing like, yeah, this is me in control. And there's not, I can't control everything, but I can at least train my brain to think of things differently. Um, I
Yep.
biggest ones I would probably say were just the learning to think about what I wanted to happen in scenarios that I was nervous about instead of spiraling and obsessing about all the little things that could go wrong because I catastrophize on everything. It was more thinking, okay, we're going to the store. I love shopping. Shopping is so much fun and I can't wait to get, this meal that they have there and really making my brain realize that the grocery store is a great place and it's a lot of fun instead of super
Mhm.
scary. So I feel like the rumble strip was the first thing that learned really. And it
Mhm.
was the first realization like, wow, this works. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think that one of the key themes that you're hitting on there that people very routinely are like, wow, this was so different from what I did before is the whole idea of training the brain,
yeah,
right? So, like, if we break anxiety down, one way to look at basically just what anxiety is anxiety is just an automatic way of processing in response to a trigger. So you have a stimulus, and then your brain has this automatic thing that it does. Like it could be the internal dialogue or a visualization of something going badly or whatever. And so nobody has ever given you a user's manual for your brain. And that's kind of what I like
right.
to think about what we're doing with clients is like, did you know that you can actually get your brain to think about it this way instead when you get triggered or when there's a stimulation? So it's kind of like learning all of those different ways to change the thinking and then
Yeah,
wiring it so it becomes automatic. So now that there's the stimulus and your mind automatically goes where we want it to go as opposed to where we don't want it to go.
yeah,
So I think that that's a really key piece of it as well. Um, One thing too that you were hitting on is the whole relapse thing and relapse prevention, and that's a big thing. So when I was early on in my career, my success rate was still very high with clients. We'd get really, really good results in the first couple of months, but we had still some clients that would kind of like come back to us a couple of months later or so on. And so that's when it really dawned on me that we had to make a really high priority to like inoculate clients, making sure that they know, like, hey, here's the types of things that are inevitably going to happen in your life down the line. And here's how to make sure you're prepared for that. Here's how to process that. Here's how to make sure that doesn't turn into a relapse. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue for us. So you've obviously been doing great. You've had a great year. Um, what from when you graduated the program to now, like, are there like a couple key things that you've like kept in mind? Is there like how have you kept yourself like doing so well? How have you maintained the results for this long?
Yeah, so I still use, not every day, but I still use a lot the rumble strip. So kind of if I do start, because there are still things I still hate going to the doctor. I still get nervous, but it's something where I still use the rumble strip. Um, I remind myself internally, I've even said it out loud, like while driving in the car. That is ridiculous to think that this is going to happen at the restaurant. Um, I make sure to remind myself that I get to decide whether or not something's scary or not, you know,
Right.
um, and also too, just committing to make sure that I am always in a positive, try to think positive, I guess. Thinking positive is probably the biggest kind of tool that I've learned is I used to jump the second I had to do something outside of the house to what could go wrong. And then now I'm like, oh, well, this could happen. That would be fun. This could happen. And I've truly just made sure that anytime there's something that can cause me to become nervous, I think of all of the positives. And to
Good.
family and friends. I mean, I had a good support system, which I'm very blessed for, but there were times I have a huge fear of the stomach bug, huge. So, and that only comes up like once a year. Where even a family member was like, "Hey, I think you either need to call Ty or you need to go into your programs and kind of do something because I can tell you're getting a little nervous with norovirus going around." It was like, "Okay," and
Right.
just that, and I think just the confidence, I don't want to give up the happiness that I have now and the freedom. The biggest thing is the freedom that I have now where I won't even allow myself to get to that
Mhm.
point. So,
Right. Right. I love this. So, and I think there's a couple things you mentioned that are worth double clicking on. The one is, we have this like little mantra of don't believe everything that you think,
yeah,
right? And it sounds like that's something that you've really mastered really well. Like you've been able to realize, like, okay, well, just because a thought is running through my mind and it's happening automatically, that doesn't
right.
mean that I have to endorse that particular version of things, right? And you might remember, but one of the tools that I know a lot of people find helpful is like asking yourself that question, like, is that really true?
Right.
When your mind wants to go down that what if thing. Another thing too, you were hitting on this a few minutes ago, but you were talking about like control. And the one thing that I always try to remind people of is that you'll never be fully in control of every thought and every feeling that you have, but you are absolutely in charge of the thoughts
Yeah.
and the feelings that you have. And same goes with life as well, right? Like you're never going to be fully in control of every aspect of your life, but you are the one in charge of your life. And we tend to feel anxiety in direct proportion to how few choices that we convince ourselves that we have. So, like, compared to now, from when you first started, right? When you initially started, it sounds like you were pretty convinced, like, you're just stuck. This is how it is. I can't really do anything about it. My mind is just kind of running me off the rails, right? And now you realize it's not like that. Like, you are the master of the ship. You get to be the one that decides how you're going to steer the wheel in response to the currents, right? So
Right.
that's a really, really key thing. And it sounds like I'm curious if you have something to say in response to this, but we've started languaging it a little bit differently since you and I work together. But one thing I start to tell people about is the idea of like setting boundaries with yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like basically deciding like how much energy you are willing to give a particular thing and then kind of
Yeah.
realizing when it's now getting unhealthy and saying, you know what, no. And then learning the skill of being able to turn the faucet off and shifting the focus to another place. It sounds like that's something you've done pretty well with too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I'm one where a lot of my thoughts and negative thoughts and anxiousness and spiraling happen when I'm kind of alone with my thoughts. So something that I tell myself on a daily basis is if something pops up in my head, I just think about, what am I doing? Okay, I'm working right now, or I'm working outside, I'm mowing the lawn. Are you doing it with intention? And I make sure that I try to just refocus my brain to what I'm doing. But
Mhm.
I would definitely say being in charge is something that is a little bit liberating, to sit there and think that I get to decide whether or not I want to be upset or sad or scared.
Mhm.
Um, and it is something that now it's hard to think back before, how I handled it, to be honest. But now it's just something that is just very easy for me to do, So
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how I do it, to be honest. It just is kind of a natural thing now. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if you'll resonate with this, but one thing that I've found is a good like teaching moment for a lot of people is people don't exactly like it when I say this, but it is the truth. It's you don't get the mental health that you want. You get the mental health that you tolerate.
yeah.
So like if you tolerate yourself, spending 6 hours a day focusing on the past, that's what you're going to get, right? If you all of a sudden though, however, decide to create a new boundary with yourself where you say, you know what? I've kind of been focusing on this thing that's outside of my control for like 10 minutes. That's too long. That's enough. We're
Right.
done. Right.
Yep.
So, what people have to learn how to do, I believe, is like to change the level at which they're willing to tolerate their mind going down those bad avenues. Yeah, of
Mhm.
course, easier said than done. It does require that like set of skills to know how to flip the switch, but
Yeah.
I think that's a key thing that people miss, is that as long as we tolerate a life with anxiety, that's what we're going to get. But if we refuse to tolerate that and we say, I'm not going to let my mind go down that rabbit hole anymore, then that's what you get too. So that's a really cool thing. So before you said that, going to pick up your kid from school was a challenge, going to the store was a challenge, like everything revolved around how do I feel, going out on a date night was,
Yeah.
sometimes an impossibility. Give us like the highlights of this past year. I know you put up that
Yeah.
post in our group recently. Like what has this past year been filled with now that there's so much more emotional space like left over?
Yeah. I feel like one of my biggest things is the freedom to use my time on other things,
Yeah.
my financial goals. Oh, sorry, Ty. My financial goals, just spending time with the kids. I felt like a lot of my time was wrapped up in spiraling out of control with anxiety. I have spent so much time with my kids, and I've gained 30 pounds from going to all the restaurants that I've been missing out on because I was too scared to go. Um, you know, I I've always been a shy person, but my parents have been together 25 years, my stepmom and my dad, and they got technically finally married. And I walked down the aisle med free, completely fine, like so excited in front of 300 people to stand at the altar with them as they got married. And it was something that I enjoyed. So, I mean, back then, if that happened, I would have, one, had to take my medication. Two, I probably wouldn't have still enjoyed it. I would have been either completely out of it or been just sitting there, maybe even panicking when my medication was going to wear off. So,
Right.
just finding joy in things that I never did. Sometimes I kind of look back at, the last couple years, not this past year, but the year before the program, and there's some days where I get a little embarrassed. I'm like, gosh, like I couldn't even go to the store. I don't think about it anymore. And
Hmm.
I always kind of joke that, back when I couldn't go to the store or back when we couldn't go out to eat, it's like a completely old person that doesn't exist anymore. But just lots of fun, lots of joy, and contentment. I don't worry about, I know in the program, you and I kind of broke down some of the things growing up, some of my values that I had growing up that I was pretty stuck on that caused a lot of my outside anxiety that I was like, nope, that's not a value anymore to me,
Right.
which has just alleviated so much stress for me and just pressure and that feeling of needing everything to be perfect. So, yeah, I mean, weddings, restaurants, we went on little trips and camping and just doing everything and anything I can as I outside of work. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. And beyond the like literal physical experiences, the big thing I know, especially for parents, that they describe really enjoying after they've used this method is like just being able to be present, right? Like
yeah,
being able to really just be there, like really be there for those moments that you're never going to get twice, like when your kid like loses their tooth or whatever,
yeah.
that kind of thing. I'm curious too, did you notice a change in the energy in your household and or in your relationship? Like how were your kids and how was your partner affected by the change in you emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's been a lot. My anxiety when I was like at a high anxiety episodic level,
Hmm.
um, some people tend to like shut down. I tended to get very irritable. So there was a lot of walking on eggshells before because they didn't know, you know, if I was irritable, overstimulated, just having an internal panic attack, and just with the kids, it's been a lot more fun because it's like, oh, you guys are off of school today. Oh, I'll take a half day. Let's go to Buffalo Wild Wings and get some lunch. With my 2-year-old, I was going through the motions, of course, as a mother, but I wasn't going to the park and enjoying it. I wasn't going to the park and going down the slide and laughing. I was just doing it because I had to. I'm a mom. You have to
Right.
take your kid to the park. Um, so yeah, and relationship wise with my fiance, I feel he has a lot of pressure off of him. He's a very patient man and he would come home from work to pick up kids from sports outings and stuff. And now, I can take on some of that burden. But relationship wise, kid wise, family, household wise, things have been awesome. There's just a lot more energy in the household.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's not being like sucked and dragged down by this like,
Yeah.
big giant problem, right? I mean, when anxiety is a part of
Mm.
daily life, it's almost as if like the household has like $100,000 in credit card debt. It's like everyone can feel it, right? It's just taking
Yeah,
up all of this energy. So
absolutely.
that's really cool. And so two final questions for you. One would be, what are you looking forward to in the future, right? That maybe before when the anxiety was really, sucking up your energy, it just seemed like, yeah, I just can't really deal with that. I gotta, just get through today. Maybe you were just in kind of survival mode. Like, is there anything that now you believe you absolutely could do and would do that before was just not even on your radar of possibilities? Like, what is the future going to hold for you and your family?
Yeah, so the last family trip we took was a nightmare for me. It was panic attack the entire 4 days. So traveling is one of the biggest things. Like I am so excited to travel. Rob and I are going to get married next year, but we're doing it our way. One of those values of like the perfectionist in me. Um, Made me plan, or I guess mentally plan this wedding that wasn't me or my fiance. It was what everybody else wanted. So I'm really excited because our wedding is going to be for us. It's not for anybody else. It's just for, Rob and I, and we're doing it our way and the way that we want to do it. So super excited for that. But honestly, traveling, we are constantly looking for Airbnbs and let's travel here, let's travel there, where would be fun with the kids, where would be fun if grandma takes the kids. So I'm really excited for that because that's something that I enjoyed doing prior to my anxiety getting really bad was just going on road trips or flying and traveling. And it just kind of
Yeah.
got put on hold for a couple of
Yeah.
years. So yeah, that's exciting. And yeah, just doing anything and everything we can.
That's
Honestly, like, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's when you're thinking about the future now, it seems like you're thinking about a future with a lot of possibilities, whereas
Yeah.
before it felt like there was almost none. So that's a really cool thing. So if you think back to that old, no, well, not old, but that previous woman that you were,
Yeah.
over a year ago, right? The woman who was trying to constantly plan and control and mitigate and how am I going to feel and well, what if this happens and what if that, the one who didn't feel like she could go do X or Y or Z, because there's plenty of them that are going to see this, that are going to
Yeah,
hear this.
absolutely.
What would you have said to her then? Like if you could go back and have a conversation with her, what would you want her to know?
Um, I feel like at that moment I was rock bottom. I've tried everything, therapy, medications, and things like that. I would really want her to know that she is stronger than she thinks she is, um, that she does have the ability to kind of overcome this, especially when it's her mind and she's in charge of her mind. Um, I would have pushed her to your program a lot sooner. I had been watching, I was in the Facebook group for like a year before I finally contacted you. But
Mhm.
that's definitely something that I would have done sooner. Um, but just reminding her that she is stronger than she thinks she is at that moment. Personally, in my life, I've had a lot of crazy traumatic events, and I have came through all of them perfectly fine. And I survived, and I'm doing good. And just a reminder that, yeah, you're good. You can handle this, and you can do this, I guess.
That's awesome. That's probably the number one thing we all fail to remember that we need to remember is that we are the ones in charge of where our life is headed. And it's
Right.
usually just that when we forget that, or it's curious that you say you waited a year. A lot of people do that. I think it comes from that whole, like, I just want to know for sure, I want to feel certain, I want to wait for the right
Yeah.
moment. But it's like, this is your life we're talking about, right? Like, when is the right time to finally get rid of anxiety? The answer is always now. But it's an incredible gift that you are sharing some of your insights. I could not be more thrilled for you. You've been a model client in the sense that you just took the tools and you applied them and you use them.
Yeah.
And that's what we find. Like, when people use the system, it works. It's not that I'm so smart or I'm a genius or anything like that. It's just the system works and anybody can do it. So I really love that you've taken the implementation so seriously. I love that you have decided to do it not just for yourself, but for your family. That's fantastic. And I'm so thrilled and excited to see what the future is going to hold for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, really awesome. So thank you so much, Jaclyn, for this. It's not
Yeah.
goodbye. It's just see you later. Let us know
Yeah.
if there's any other major life milestones. And
I'll post it on the Facebook group. I don't know. I was like, oh, I was sitting there and I'm like, people got to know. Because I will tell you, one of my hesitations to signing up is how long is it going to last? Am I going to have this honeymoon stage of, yeah, I feel great. I have this boost of confidence. And then it's going to trail off and I'm going to be back, in a spiral. And that's why around a year, I was like, I'm just going to post, hey, this works.
right,
It's been a year and I'm still really, really good. And it was definitely worth I mean, it was a commitment and it was hard work. And there were some rough phone calls. There was tears sometimes, but um, all in all, it was totally worth it. Totally worth
right.
it. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jaclyn.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm so glad to see you like fully confidently like owning your power in yourself. It's a really
Yeah.
awesome thing to see. So send
Thanks.
your family my best,
I
and
will.
we'll chat with you soon. Okay. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Sounds great. Thanks, Ty.
All right. Bye.
Bye.